Hi everybody, welcome to a new edition of Let's Talk About Education with Antonio Corrales. We have talked in this show before about several educational programs in pre-K 12 and higher ed and different initiatives to help students. But today we have the honor to have with us future Goretti Rerri.
Yes.
Who's gonna talk to us about a really important topic. Basically, we're gonna be talking about the impact of educational programs to help students with autism. It's a topic that it affects a lot of parents and a lot of students. And we want to hear in simple terms how can we help that population that have that condition, autism, and how can we contribute to make their life easier and increase student achievement. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Corrales.
Absolutely.
It's a delight.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Okay, why don't we start by letting you introduce yourself to the audience and kind of letting
Okay.
them know how do you get to where you are in your career.
Okay. Well, like Dr. Corrales said, my name is Goretti Rerri, and I'm a special education teacher at the Pasadena Independent School District here in Houston. I've been in Pasadena for the last 15 years. However, my career started many years ago in Nigeria. Yes, before my family moved to the United States, I had obtained a master's degree in English and, a bachelor's degree in English and a master's degree in business administration, and had worked in a steel manufacturing company for about 9 years before we moved to the United States. Initially, we settled in New York City, and it was there that my youngest of 3 children was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Needless to say that diagnosis changed the path of my career. After the diagnosis, I became consumed with the need or with the desire to learn all I could about ASD, autism, and special education in general. So when my family moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, I enrolled in the Master of Education program at Xavier University in Cincinnati. And in 2000, I graduated with my master's in education and specializing in special education. So right after that, I obtained a job in Springfield Public Schools in Massachusetts as a special education teacher. I worked in Springfield for 4 years, and then before we moved to Houston, Texas, where I obtained a job with Pasadena ISD. That was in 2004. So I've been with Pasadena since then. My job in Pasadena is, of course, a classroom special ed teacher. What I do is I pull kids all day long to my room and do small groups with them. But in addition to my classroom work, I also do a district-wide parent training, in-home training for parents, where I go into the homes and I help them to teach their children with autism certain, basic functions, daily living functions like toileting and, behavior and anything the family needs. And I've also, in Pasadena, I've also mentored several in-service and pre-service teachers. So, so I'm happy to be
That
here,
is
Dr.
awesome.
Corrales.
That is awesome. That is awesome. What an honor. All right. So you know that this topic, autism, is still a topic that is pretty unknown for a lot of people. A lot of
Yes.
people are unfamiliar.
Yeah.
Even though we have an important percentage of our student body in the nation who is under this condition.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, for those viewers who may have no idea
Yes.
how to, including special ed teachers,
Yes.
special education teachers,
Mhm.
for those viewers who are looking at us right now, what can you tell us in simple terms, what will it take to become an effective educator to
Yes.
reach students with autism condition? Because
Yes.
as you said, there's different levels, there are
Yes.
different labels within the condition.
Yes.
So what can you tell us in simple terms for those educators looking at us right now, and
Yes.
maybe having a child, a
Yes.
student in their classroom with
Yes.
autism, how can they become more effective?
Yes. So that's a good question, Dr. Corrales, because you're right. A lot of people don't know what to do with students with autism, and they try to avoid them because they don't know what to do with them.
Because they get scared.
They get scared. So what I want to say though is, early intervention is very, very important for children with autism. And children that have early intervention services do have a higher chance of showing significant, positive developmental outcomes than children who did not.
When you talk about early intervention service, you're
Yes.
talking about early childhood.
Early childhood, that is key. However, for educators, who want to reach children, who want to be effective in the intervention for children with autism, whether they are in early intervention or whether in an elementary school, and even in some cases, the youths, certain things are important for that educator to know. I would say about four. There are many things, but four things stand out.
Okay.
The first one is to understand the complex nature of autism.
Okay.
Autism is a neurological dysfunction that affects the ability of somebody to communicate and to be engaged in social skills. Okay? So, and it's a spectrum disorder, and that's why it is called autism spectrum disorder.
Okay.
And within this spectrum, there's a wide range of developmental abilities and symptoms and characteristics. So no two people with autism are the same. See? So there are some people with autism that on the high end, they can perform all functions of life, all daily living functions. And there are people on the other end who can need substantial support to be able to perform basic functions. So, an understanding of that will afford the educator, will inform that educator on how to individualize intervention for the students. Because if you don't understand the different abilities, then you might not be able to hone in on, okay, what's good for this child? What are the skills for this particular child? Where does this child fall in that big spectrum?
And that's really important because
Yes.
so it's a mistake to put everybody under the same umbrella.
No, everybody you can. And that's why it's challenging.
Yeah.
That's why it's very challenging.
Exactly.
Because every child is different. So what works for this will not work for that. Just mere understanding of that will help the educator to be able to program an intervention that will work for each child under his or her care. Another thing the educator needs to understand is what we call functional behavior assessment.
Okay.
FBA for short. Many children with autism have, every once in a while, not all the time, but they show some very challenging behaviors.
Okay.
And some of the behaviors can be really intense. Some may be frequent, and some may have a very long duration.
Okay.
So, and sometimes they could be disruptive to the extent where they become unsafe for the children themselves and for their peers around them, or they may disrupt learning for the child or for the classmates. So when that happens, a functional behavior assessment is what we use. What that helps us to do is, it helps us to understand the behavior, the nature of the behavior, and also to determine the function of the behavior. Because all behaviors have a function.
Correct.
And there are four broad areas or four broad functions that cause behaviors.
Okay.
First one is attention.
Okay.
The second one is a need for tangible a need to have something
Okay.
tangible,
Okay.
either an object or food or something.
Okay.
Another one is avoidance. Avoidance, just you don't want to do it, just to avoid, to get away from something.
Okay.
So it's an avoidance. And the last one is sensory. So it might be sensory issues that the child may have. So what the functional behavior assessment helps you to do is to collect data in under 3 different key areas: antecedents, behavior, and consequence. So antecedents would be what happens right before the behavior. And then behavior is what exactly is the behavior that you are trying to target. And then consequence is what happens right after the behavior. So you document, you make your documentation on the ABC documentation chart, and that is what, then you do the analysis, and that's going to help you determine the behavior and what is driving it. So, and then that's going to help you to program your intervention to either replace the inappropriate behavior, or to teach alternative, that is to teach alternative behaviors that are more appropriate. So another thing that would be good for that, I said 4 things, I've already talked about 2.
Okay.
The third one will be what we call naturalistic teaching strategies.
Okay.
Children with autism, especially the young ones, need to learn in an environment, need to learn a skill in an environment where they will use that skill, because they are not able to transfer skills from one setting to another. So what naturalistic teaching does is to afford the child the opportunity to learn social skills, for example, within the context, within the social environment where the child finds himself. And I'll give you an example. Let's say the child, one of the needs for the child is to learn how to request a snack from the mother at home. If that skill is taught in school and you expect the child to transfer that knowledge to the home situation, it's very unlikely it's going to happen.
Okay.
So what you do is you train the child to request snacks from the mother in the home environment.
Okay.
So that's the whole point about naturalistic intervention. And there are 3 under naturalistic. We have the pivotal response treatment, we have the incidental, and we have the natural language paradigm. So these are things that a special educator needs to know and understand, because they are tools. I consider them to be tools in your toolbox. So depending on the child's need, depending on the environment, depending on what you're teaching, you can pull what to use. So so that's that. And the last one, and the most important, because it permeates all the others, is reinforcement. You have to know how to do reinforcement. Reinforcement is what happens after a behavior. Okay? And for example, again, let's say, the child doesn't like to make the bed, but whenever the child is rewarded, whether the mother gives the child a favorite cookie, the child feels happy. So the child will make the bed again, because she knows that whenever she makes the bed, what happens? Mom gives her a cookie.
Correct.
So she has already linked that consequence with her behavior. So it's more likely that that behavior will continue.
Positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement. That's what reinforcement is all about. But reinforcement is tricky, because even though most of the time we're encouraged to do positive reinforcement, but there is such thing as negative reinforcement. We also have what we call differential reinforcements. We also have immediate and delayed reinforcements, and we also have contingent and non-contingent reinforcements. So there are different kinds of reinforcements. Again, a teacher needs to put all of this in their toolbox, and you pull them as you need them. depending on the child, depending on the environment and the
Yeah.
skill you're teaching.
Yeah.
So those
That
are
is
the four
fascinating.
things. Those are the four things that a special educator for young children, even older children, need to know.
That is fascinating. Thank you
Yes.
so much for summarizing it for us. It's so simple, and I'm sure a lot of our viewers are going to be taking notes there.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is awesome. All right, tell us a little bit about. So you have been in the job for so many years, dealing with, students with autism. What does a regular day in your job look like?
Wow. Well, it's very structured.
Okay.
Very structured. It's
And is
predictable.
that's on purpose, right? That way
Yes.
they feel
Oh yes.
comfortable. Okay.
Oh yes. It's very structured. It's and so my day begins at 8 o'clock in the
Okay.
morning when I pull a pair of first graders. I go to their general education classroom and I pull them out to my room, and I have them for 30 minutes for writing.
Okay.
Yes. And I look at their IEP goals because special ed children have individualized plans. So I look at their goals and see what they're supposed to learn. And of course, before now, I would have prepared their lesson plans and all that. And then I teach them.
Okay.
At the end of 30 minutes, I send them back
Okay.
to the class because it's good for them to be in the inclusion environment where they can learn from their peers and be exposed to the general education curriculum. Because typically when they are with me, I'm honing on the skills they need
Yeah.
to bridge the gap.
Yes.
Even though I try to cover the whole curriculum, but sometimes it's not possible.
Not possible.
Yes, so it's always good for them to stay in their regular class. So anyway, when I take the first graders back, then at 8:30, I get a group of third and fourth graders.
Okay.
4 of them, I pull them for writing again.
Yeah.
And then for another 30 minutes. After that, I take them back. And then at 9 o'clock, I pull my second graders. This time they come for math.
Okay.
There are about 7 of them.
Exactly.
So I don't teach all 7 at the same time. I do centers and
Okay.
I pull them 2, 3 at a
So
time.
they can have some individuals.
Yes, and sometimes I do whole group. In fact, sometimes depending on the skill, sometimes I'll do whole group if they are all.
But
Yes.
your routine is pretty predictive.
It's predictive. So that's what I do throughout the day.
And
basically.
they feel because that way they feel more comfortable.
Oh yes,
Right?
they have. When they come into my room, they already know what we do first.
What about
Yes.
a follow-up question on that one?
Yes.
What about your communication with parents, though? I mean, because I think that's another thing that some educators may not feel
Yes.
comfortable with.
Yes.
How is that relationship with your parents?
Oh my goodness, I have great relationship with my parents. I really do.
And that's
I couldn't
that's
do-
critical for you, right? To
Oh
have that
yes,
support.
I couldn't do what I do without the parents, really. And I'm lucky to have very supportive parents. Most of my parents are very supportive. I have their emails.
Okay.
So I email them, back and forth. They email me. They don't understand. If they don't see, say, homework, they will email me. I say, hey, Miss Rerri, I didn't see so person's homework. Did you give homework today? I will say, oh yeah, I did. Okay, what I'll do, I'll check in the backpack and I'll make sure it gets to you tomorrow.
Correct.
Or they ask questions, I answer, and it's a very good relationship.
What about nutrition? Do they deal with you in terms of nutrition, like or you don't get into that part?
With nutrition for the kids?
Yeah.
Like an intervention kind of nutrition?
Yeah, like for example, if they have a specific diet or something, like, do they
Well,
communicate with you in that area?
Yeah, of course. If a child, I haven't had any child that is on special diet.
Okay.
However, wait a minute, I better take that back. Well, not currently, but in my former school, in my previous jobs, I did have children. That's something that comes up during the ARD meeting. The ARD meeting is the IEP meeting where we plan. So there is a plan for that, and we have procedures. So, we follow the procedures, and everybody's involved in that situation.
So that way
the cafeteria is involved, the school nurse is involved, everybody's involved in that situation.
To make sure the child gets
Exactly,
awesome.
exactly.
What are the most challenging part of your job?
Wow, the most challenging part will be definitely when the students are not motivated to learn. Sometimes they are not motivated to learn. And whenever that happens, I look back, I don't blame the kids. I look back at what I'm doing and I try to reflect to see, am I doing something wrong? Is there a way I can do it better? But sometimes it's hard because there are factors that are external, that are beyond the control of teachers. That that are a function of the children's disinterest in learning, and that has to do with some of their family situations. Some of the children have very tough lives, Dr. Corrales. Very, very tough lives. Father is in jail, mother is on drugs, they don't even know where she is. There are all kinds of things going on.
And that trickle down to the child.
Of course. And then, so, there's nothing more disheartening to a teacher to realize that you cannot fix the family of the children that you serve.
That is out of your control.
And you know that they are hurting. They are hurting. So just being in that space with the kids and knowing that there's not much I can do to fix their families for them, that is the hardest part of my job. Yes.
What about dealing with bureaucracy though? Because a lot of I know I have been in education for quite a while, like you, and I know that special education sometimes for some educators can become a little bureaucratic in terms of paperwork and all that. How do you deal with that and serve the child at the same time?
Dr. Corrales, I'm very happy you mentioned this because this is a real problem in special ed. Did you know that there is shortage of special education teachers in this country? And one of the reasons there is shortage is because a lot of pre-service teachers do not want to go into special ed. When you ask them why, they will say too much paperwork. I personally know many special ed teachers who left special ed and went to general ed, and they told me they couldn't deal with the paperwork. So there is a lot of paperwork involved. But the tricky thing is this: some of the paperwork is necessary. Because special ed is, a lot of what we do in special ed is driven by the special ed law, the IDEA. And there are certain things that have to be documented, certain things that have to be done to show that certain things are being done. Okay? So, otherwise, we'll be out of compliance. And I don't know if you know that, but litigations against school districts is rising, it's going up, because parents are holding schools accountable for non-compliance. So the only way to comply is to document and do things the way they're supposed to be done. You see the paradox in it? Yeah. However, what I will say is this: there is some redundancy in some of this paperwork. There is some, what we need to do is go back, look at the system and streamline the system and get rid of the redundant parts. There are some that are redundant that have nothing to do with compliance purposes. It's just habit, that's how we've always done it, and we're just going to keep doing it.
Right.
So I think that's so that we can encourage people to stay in special ed.
Or get into the field.
And get into the field.
I like it. I like the idea.
Yes.
But what about the most fun part of your job? What are the things that...
it's the kids. Got to be the kids, Dr. Corrales. My kids. When I think about them, they just bring a smile to my face. They are I don't know about other kids in other classrooms, but the ones that I have in my classroom, they are the cutest. I'm sorry. They are the cutest. So,
and I guess seeing them grow.
I've seen them grow. And when they grow, I pass them on to the next. And when I see them in the hallway, they call my name, Miss Rerri, can we come with you? Can we come with you? I said, no, you can't come with me.
That is so
so sometimes, when they learn something new, something they may have been struggling with, and then all of a sudden they get it. And you can see it in their demeanor, and they will just say, oh, Miss Rerri, I get it. I said, you did. And that is so heartwarming for me.
That is awesome.
Also, there are times too that, I feel the weight of my responsibility on my shoulder because there's a lot to do, paperwork and preparing for art and lesson plan, individualizing everybody's work and all that. So sometimes the responsibility weighs down on me, and it's very hard to be cheerful sometimes, to be always cheerful.
Correct.
Right. So, but in the midst of that, when I'm with the kids, somebody over there will just say something, and I will burst out laughing. And then we ask, Miss Rerri, why are you laughing? I said, because of what you said, silly. He said, I said, it was funny. Really? They don't even know they are funny. Oh, my goodness. And that is the fun part of it.
That is so good. Well, and I want us to talk a little bit about something really special. That you wrote a book. It's called My Box of Chocolate.
Yes.
How My Child with Autism Learn to Read, Write, and More.
Yes.
And I really invite you to. Where can the viewers buy the book?
The book is available on Amazon.com.
On Amazon.com.
Yes, it's
awesome.
Also available on Kindle. On Amazon.com.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay, what can you tell us about the book? Because it sounds like a really interesting book.
It's an interesting book. It's an interesting book. I've got very positive feedback on the book.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, let me talk a little bit about the title.
Yeah.
My Box of Chocolate. The title was inspired by the movie Forrest
Gump. Yes.
Where Forrest said, my mom always told me life was like a box of chocolate. You never know what you're going to get. That is so true. Because as a young mother, when I had my baby, 31, my baby's 31 now. 31 years ago, not quite. She was diagnosed at 4 years old. But when I had her, I thought she was just going to be a typical child. And life was just going to be typical, Yeah. But it didn't turn out that way. So that was my box of chocolate. When I opened my box of chocolate, there was a little bit of, what's in here? That's not what I expected. However, we've had a wonderful journey. And I wrote this book to document our experiences from birth all the way to her high school graduation. I wrote it for two reasons. One, to bring autism awareness to the general public, because this book is for everybody. And I wrote in such a way that they will see autism in action. I took the readers to the classrooms, to the playground, to the homes, to see what it looks like to be an autistic child, to live in an autistic, for the families of autistic children, what it looks like, and how the child learns in school, what the teachers did, how the child responded, what kind of interventions, what behavior management, and everything. So it's really like a picture, So, and I did that on purpose because I felt like people theoretically think they know what autism is, but they really don't know.
Correct.
And the only way they can know is if they visualize it.
Correct.
The book will help them to visualize what it is.
Well, what a great tool for educators, for parents, for even students.
For students.
Who maybe looking into the teaching profession. Trying to
exactly.
That
Exactly.
Is awesome.
Yes.
That is awesome.
Like I said, I had two reasons for writing it. That is the first one, autism awareness. The other one is for parents and educators to share what worked with us.
Correct.
And to see what we did and to inspire. This is a very uplifting book. Any parent who is feeling sad and feeling, oh, my child, when they read it and see where my baby was at the beginning and where she ended up, they're going to feel empowered, inspired, and they're going to want to do more for their child.
That is beautiful.
Yes.
What a positive message.
It
That
is.
is awesome. I love it. Well, I recommend all our viewers to definitely acquire the book, and all our educators out there. My Box of Chocolate, Goretti Rerri, and Amazon.com, and Kindle.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes,
I want to thank you one more time for being with us
Thank
today.
you.
It was really
It was a pleasure. It was a
really
pleasure,
instructional.
Dr. Corrales.
Yeah, you really
pleasure.
explain in simple terms how to help students with autism, and I really appreciate you.
Yes, thank you.
And our viewers out there, remember that we have this interview and many others on Antonio Corrales YouTube channel. Let's talk about education with Antonio Corrales and Sterling Evaluation Assessment.com. Please help somebody today, and see you next time.
Thank you.